For most of human history, going to the doctor made you more likely to die, and that's not a figure of speech. In one Vienna hospital in the 1840s, there were two maternity wards. In one, women were delivered by midwives, in the other, by doctors and medical students. The women knew which was which. They begged to be sent to the midwives. Some of them gave birth in the street instead on purpose and then came in afterwards, and they were right to. The doctor's ward was killing 1 in every 10 mothers. One man worked out why. He proved it, he stopped it, and his colleagues drove him out of the profession for it. He died at an asylum. So let's run the tape backwards. From a vaccine designed in 2 days, all the way back to the first thing a person did that genuinely made a sick person better. Because when you look at it in reverse, you find something uncomfortable. Medicine has only been reliably better than doing nothing for about 150 years. Start with today. In January 2020, the genetic sequence of a new virus was published online. Within about 2 days, a vaccine design existed. Not manufactured, not tested, but designed from a text file before most people heard the virus's name. That is the world you live in. We edit genes, we transplant faces, we put a camera in a pill and swallow it. Antibiotics turn what used to be a death sentence into a mildly annoying week. And the result is the single most dramatic number in human history. For most of our existence, average life expectancy says somewhere between 30 to 40 years, dragged down brutally by children who never made it. It's now over 70 worldwide. Here's the part that should stop you. Almost none of that is old. Our great-great-grandparents lived in a world where medicine was mostly guessing, and the guessing was often worse than nothing. So where's the line? And when did medicine actually start working? Rewind to 1928. A Scottish bacteriologist named Alexander Fleming comes back from a holiday to a messy lab. One of his bacterial cultures had gotten contaminated by a mold, and around the mold, the bacteria are dead. A clear ring where nothing will grow. That's penicillin. It sits mostly ignored for a decade until a team at Oxford works out how to purify and mass produce it during the Second World War. Try to feel what the world was like before that. A scratch from a rose thorn could kill you. An infected tooth could kill you. Childbirth, routinely. Any surgery that broke the skin was a coin flip against infection, and the coin was weighted badly. Antibiotics are the single biggest reason you're likely to meet your grandchildren, and they're younger than an airplane. But penicillin only makes sense if you already know that infection is caused by something alive, and that idea is younger than you think too. Keep rewinding to the operating theaters of the mid-1800s. Surgeons operated in their street clothes. Many wore the same coat for years, stiff with old blood, and wore it proudly. A filthy coat meant an experienced surgeon. They didn't wash instruments between patients. They didn't wash hands, and when wounds filled with pus, that was widely considered a good sign, a normal part of healing. There was even a phrase for it, laudable pus. Then Louis Pasteur showed that invisible living organism caused fermentation and disease, and a surgeon named Joseph Lister took the obvious next step. If tiny organisms are getting into wounds and killing them, he started spraying carbolic acid and cleaning instruments, and his patients stopped dying at anything like the old rate. But here's the thing, 20 years before Lister, a doctor in Vienna had already proved the practical half of it with numbers, and was destroyed for it. Ignaz Semmelweis was a young obstetrician, and he is haunted by those two maternity wards. Same building, same patients, wildly different death rates. Roughly 1 in 10 in the doctor's ward versus about 1 in 25 with the midwives. Every explanation was an offer of nonsense. Bad air, overcrowding, a woman's own shame. Semmelweis kept measuring. And then a colleague of his, Jacob Kolechka, cut his finger during the autopsy and died. And the findings inside his body looked exactly like the women dying in the ward. That was it. That was the answer. The doctors were performing autopsies in the morning and delivering babies in the afternoon with the same unwashed hands. They were carrying something from the dead directly into living women. Semmelweis ordered every doctor to scrub with chlorinated lime before entering the ward. The death rate collapsed, down to about 1 in 100. He had, in fact, solved it. No germ theory, no microscope, no explanation for why. Just an observation, a measurement, and a rule that worked. And the profession rejected him, not gently. The implication was unbearable, that respected physicians had been killing their own patients with their hands. He was mocked, his contract wasn't renewed, and he grew increasingly angry and erratic as the years went on. In 1865, he was committed to an asylum. He died there within weeks, age 47, from an infected wound. The man who proved that infection was carried on unwashed hands science died of an infection in an institution dismissed by his colleagues. Germ theory proved him right about 20 years later. So what were doctors doing for about 200 years before that? Mostly taking blood out of people. The dominant theory of the body, inherited from the Greek and Roman physicians and codified by Galen in the 2nd century, said health was a balance of 4 fluids, the humors. Too much of one can make you ill, so if you remove some, bleeding, purging, blistering, it is difficult to overstate how long that lasted. That framework governed Western medicine for something like 1500 years. Not because it worked, but because it was coherent, it was taught, and it worked. And everyone confident enough to challenge it had been trained in it. In December 1799, George Washington woke with a severe throat infection. About over 12 hours, his physicians drained an estimated of 5 to 7 pints of blood, a huge share of everything in his body. He died that night. They were doing their absolute best by the standards of the finest medicine available, which raises the real question. In all that time, was anything actually working? Yes, a little, and it never came from theory. Willow bark had been chewed for pain and fever for thousands of years in cultures with no contact with each other. Nobody knew why it worked. In 1828, a chemist isolated an active compound from it, and by the end of the century, it had become one of the most widely used drugs on Earth. Aspirin. Honey was packed into wounds in ancient Egypt. It genuinely does resist bacteria. And in 1991, hikers in the Alps found a 5,000-year-old man frozen into ice. Among his belongings was a fungus that researchers believe he may have carried medicinally. That's the actual origin. Not a theory of the body, not a physician, just people noticing, across thousands of years, that a handful of things reliably help, and passing it on. The first medicine was accumulated observation. It only stopped being guesswork when someone started counting. So run the tape for it again and let's watch. Galen's humor, obviously incorrect for 1,500 years. Bleeding a dying president, best practice. A blood-stiffened code, the mark of a professional. Pus in the wound, a good sign. Every one of those mainstream, taught and defended by intelligent people to their honest best. Every one of them was replaced by someone who measured instead of assuming, and who was usually attacked for it at first. That's the pattern. Not that doctors were stupid, that certainty is cheap, and measurement is expensive, and the gap between them is where people die. Modern medicine is different in one specific way. It is built to catch itself being wrong. Trials, controls, replication, the whole apparatus exists to do today's ideas what germ theory did to the humors, which is worth remembering the next time something is obviously true. But as we can see nowadays, sometimes we also get ahead of ourselves whenever we're creating our own new medicines, This could be skipping long-term studies or misrepresenting the data that's there. But if you want the full history, the next world-changing thing, subscribe. New episode coming soon.